Good morning. I hope wherever you're at, it is sunny and blue skies, and I hope you're ready for another episode of Good Morning Meeting. We are here today with none other than my partner in business, one of my very best friends, and one of the most elite sales reps to ever do it, Skyler Griffin. Skyler, welcome onto the podcast, man.
What's up, man? Happy to be here.
We're stoked to have you. Guys, Skyler, we have a couple things we want to talk about today. Skyler, his best summer, to give him a little bit of an intro, was in Portland, did a golden door, over 1,100 accounts. And what was the time frame on that?
4.5 months, 120 knocking days.
Okay. Quarterly pest control, like pretty insane what he did that year. Led the number one team in the company that year. They won the Rumble. He's trained 30 plus golden doors, rookie golden doors. I mean, just has a massive rap sheet. But I want to hone in for everyone on that Portland summer, because one of the things that happened, and I want to dive into this story, is, you kind of coined this pre-overcoming objection. It was something that we didn't practice as a company. You and Brock go out. I'm assuming there was a story as to how you figured it out.
Sure.
You kind of start selling really well. And it's crazy how the entire company changed because of something that you figured out. So there's two kind of lessons in here I want to dive into. The second one is going to be pre-overcoming objections. But before we get into what that actually is and what it means, let's talk about, how did you as a rep, how did that come to be? How did you start to learn how to do that?
Yeah. So first off, I think, before I even begin talking about any of the story of how that came to be, I think it'd be super important just to mention that I had Brock out there with me the whole summer, and neither of us had sold 1,000 accounts that year before going out there. Both of us did it that summer. And so I think so much of it was us pacing with each other and learning from each other, and just being willing to try new things, right? And so there were a couple of things that we really took away from that summer, on the team. And I think how we discovered a lot of these lessons that we now have just kind of commonplace language for is we were just really intentional about what our actual pitch was, what the sales process looked like, and we would just try and intentionally find ways to improve it. And so, I remember having a notes tab on my phone. I literally called it Stuff That Works. And after every big day, and I talk to reps all the time about doing this now, and I encourage them to do it. But after every big day, I would just spend a couple of minutes writing down and thinking intentionally for about that day and what had worked and what had gone well. And when you do that enough times, you start to notice common trends, right? So you start to notice, oh, when I do this, this happens. Oh, when I do this, this happens. And so this Stuff That Works notes tab just turned into what I would call my recipe for a big day. And it got to the point where I had it so dialed in for the market and for, what we were selling and where we were selling, that I was pretty confident that if I just went out and did all of the stuff on that tab, I would sell anywhere between 8 and 12 accounts per day. And that's kind of what it averaged out to look like. I think my average was 9.6 accounts per day over that 120-day summer, right? And so that's a big thing that I would encourage just any rep that's out knocking right now. Be so intentional about getting better, and be intentional about what works when you're on the doors. Write those things down, and then once you get to the point where you have sold consistently at a high level, don't be afraid to try and implement these things that are going to make your pitch even better, that are going to improve your sales process. And that's how you just continue to iterate and adapt on what's worked in the past and to make it even better for the next group.
And guys, a good day is totally subjective, right? Skyler at that day, maybe a 7 or an 8 or a 9 day was a really good day. For a lot of people listening to this podcast, it might be you have your first 3 day. It might be your first day that you get a sale. It might be you're a veteran and you just had your first 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Whatever it is, the principle here is when you have a good day, pull out a notes tab. It's the recipe for success or the Stuff That Works notes tab, and take the moment like Skyler did to say, hey, what worked today? And I think there's actually an inverse way of doing that as well, because I wish I would have done that more when I was knocking. But something that I did is I don't think it was called this, but I have like a stuff that doesn't work tab.
Yeah, there you go.
Like I would think of things like it doesn't work to spiral and to freak out and to overthink. And there's certain people that I would call that would be like, oh man, I know it sucks that you're not doing good. Just move areas and things that just didn't work.
Yep.
And so I think there's just this massive principle in there that whoever you are listening to this, you are so capable of leveling yourself up. And you can do that through finding things that works and writing those things down and replicating them and focusing on them, and also identifying things that really don't work and trying to avoid doing those. And it sounds like a lot, again, Skyler and Brock, neither of them had sold 1,000 accounts. They both go out, have over 1,000 account summer, had massive impact on like their personal lives, on their team, on the company. And it's because they were willing to take these 3 minutes that no one else is willing to take. So, Skyler, let's talk about, again, so getting into the topic of like pre-overcoming objections.
Yep.
I would imagine, because again, that's not something that I know that we talked about or trained about or did as a company up until you and Brock. And so I would imagine there was something that was happening consistently that said, hey, like, this isn't working. We need to go find a different way to solve this problem. And so walk us through kind of how that happened.
Yeah.
So,
So I can't remember, like, I remember maybe having a training, not like a big formal one time, but just about like pre-overcoming the card specifically. Maybe it was Ben or someone else, but they had talked about just like, oh yeah, like if you know, from the beginning of the pitch, you're letting them know that you don't have cards, you don't have flyers. Well, then hopefully that doesn't become an objection later in the pitch. And so kind of just grasped that and took it and ran with it. And, you know, Brock and I started thinking, well, how can we just apply this throughout the entire pitch with all of these common objections that typically happen? And so we just started to think like, okay, what are the most common objections that you get in the sales process when you're selling pest control? And you guys probably are already thinking about which ones those are. Like, can I get a card? Let me think about it. I do it myself. I'm not seeing bugs. I already have a company.
I'm happy with my company.
I'm happy with my company. I'm in a contract they just treated. It's all of these common objections. And so where we really like hammered it hard was we wanted to get really, really good at pre-overcoming the card and pre-overcoming the think about it, because we felt like that was probably the objection that people get the most. And it's also the objection that people give when it's not like a real objection not to buy. It's just like they just don't want to buy right now. And so we started thinking, okay, well, what can we say earlier in the pitch, earlier in the sales process to actually help customers, help put them in decision-making mode right now so that they're actually listening to the pitch with intent to see if they want to make a buying decision, and not just listening to then ask to get a card.
Right.
And so how that looked in practice was we now call this principle framing, but framing is just pre-overcoming the card objection a couple of times throughout the pitch. And so how this looks, right, is you go through your intro, and then right before you move from the intro phase into actually creating need and meeting need, it's a simple line. Doesn't have to be exactly like this, but you say something along the lines of like, yeah, now the only reason I come out today, I just come out the same day as the trucks. We set everyone up together on the same route. That's how we're able to cut down the travel costs and get you guys a better discount. So I don't bring any cards or flyers. I just set it up today for whoever wants the group deal. Now, all of a sudden, before I even start building value in the pitch or building value in the service that I'm selling, I'm helping the customer understand, hey, this is a today thing. I'm not going to give them a card. So I do it right there. And then we would also do it again after we had built value, but before we go over price. So we would then say, you know, we've gone through the service, we've built value in what we're doing, we've talked about their needs, we've helped solve that problem. We go over the program, what it looks like, you know, how long the contract is, how often we come out. And then I'd remind them, I'd be like, yeah, now, like I said, the whole reason I'm out here today, I get it set up today. It doesn't take super long to do, but I don't bring cards and flyers out. I'm just setting everyone up today who wants that group discount. What's the square footage of your home? Then I go through the price. And now, right as I'm taking them through the pricing, they're looking at the pricing, not thinking that they're just going to ask for the card at the end, but they're actually thinking like, okay, is this something that I want to do? And so what we found is when we applied that principle over and over and over again, we would just get that objection way, way, way less. And we would seemingly create more laydowns for ourselves. But really, it was just the fact that we took that objection out of the quiver before they could shoot the arrow at us, right? And before they could hit us back. And the whole principle of pre-overcoming objections is just, it's way easier to just jump over the hole than fall into the hole and have to climb out of it.
Right.
And so that's something that we then started to apply. Yeah, great. And that's something that we just started to apply with all sorts of other objections. And then next thing you know, it's something that we talk about in commonplace training because it just worked so well.
Yeah, guys. And I want to kind of give you a little backdrop on my side of that story. So I'm out in Minneapolis. I am in struggle city. I'm getting that objection left and right. And again, I'm like salty at this point. I'm like this is my 7th year. It's not like it's not like I'm brand new at this, right? And I specifically remember like seeing Skyler, seeing Brock, seeing the success they're having and just being like, I had to take a little bit of a humble pill, like it's hard to go ask someone who you feel like, you've been selling the same amount of time, whatever, to be like, hey, what are you doing?
And you had always outsold me too.
Yeah. And that was tough for me. Right. And so I remember having to take this humble pill and be like, hey, like, what are you guys doing? And they just talked about this pre-overcoming. And so if you haven't done this, I want you to know that was the number one objection I was getting until I learned how to apply what Skyler just said. And then it became one of the objections I got the least. And what's interesting about that is sales, like Skyler said, started to get easier. Because again, instead of me they give me the objection, now I have to overcome it and do all these other things. They just stop giving it to me. And then they oftentimes give you the real objection or the real thing that holds them back. And so you can get to the point where they buy faster. And couple of things with that. So even like, I remember after I learned this, I had a lot of switchovers when I was in Minneapolis. And I remember I started to get this objection a ton, like, yeah, but I'm happy with my company. And I started to like beat my head. And then I remember thinking, well, okay, what if this principle is the same? And so I started thinking, hey, if someone's paying for a company, shouldn't my assumption be that they're happy for it? Not the opposite. And so all of a sudden I started saying to people like, yeah, most people out here are like, they're happy with their company. That's not why they're switching. They just like that they are getting a lot more value with us, or that we're doing this extra, that we're doing this different.
Yep.
And what's crazy is, guess what stopped happening? I started having I had way fewer people tell me they're happy with my company because they just knew that I knew that. Right. Yep. And the other thing with cards is, to that exact same example, I would have people be like, oh yeah, you don't bring cards with you. So it's like a today thing. They would almost start telling me that they can't give me that objection.
I can't tell you how many people would go to give me the objection, but, oh, you said that it was just a today thing. And then either they just make the decision right then and there, or they, I knew that I was doing well when all of a sudden I would get like maybe the spouse that doesn't handle the pest control offering to call their spouse and like ask them, can I get a card? Oh, no, you don't do cards. Well, let me just call them really quick and see. And then I'd get on the phone and I would just close the decision maker, and then I'd get a ton of sales that way. So that was like one way that I knew that it was working, was because people were just now not trying to just defer it down the road. They were ready to make the decision then and there.
So guys, just want to kind of unlock 2 principles to kind of package this all for everyone. The first one is like, not all new, amazing, impactful things are going to come from like a book or from like a morning meeting.
Yeah.
And a lot of things can come from that, to be clear. But this massive principle that literally changed my summer, and I know has changed hundreds of other summers at the Grit and probably outside of the Grit, was really just 2 guys who were getting an objection over and over again and put their heads together and said, hey, how could we like not get this objection? And then they went out and tested things until they figured out something that worked. And then they replicated it. They taught their reps. And so I think that's the first principle in this, is that like, sometimes you got to just own your own success and troubleshoot and work and find
for sure
what works.
For sure. You can't count on someone just coming to you and giving you the solution to all of your, your daily sales problems. You have to actually just grab the bull by the horns, and you have to like start to identify and take it into your own hands of like, okay, what's not working? What does work? How can I do more of what works and less of what doesn't? And if you're just intentionally doing more of the things that work and cutting out the things that don't work, you're just going to get better.
Well, dude, and it makes me think of Ben Egan one time gave us a training. I think you were with us. We were out in Michigan on like asking good questions. And the only way I got good is I remember literally having a notes tab. And every time I would ask a question that did something for me and furthered me in the sales process and helped me get deals, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to use that question more.
Yep.
And there was just a ton of stupid questions that I asked that didn't help me, derailed the sales process, got people on tangents. And same thing, I actually vividly remember writing those things down. And so people say like, how did you get good at asking questions? It's like, well, manager gave me training. And then I just went and troubleshooted it, and I found what worked for me. And sometimes the questions that work for me don't work for other people, but it took me going out and being willing to fail and being willing to like really dig into it to find what works. And I think that principle is just in so many different aspects of life, but specifically in like the door-to-door pitch, right? The second principle in that, guys, is just like exactly what it is. It's just pre-overcoming. If you're getting objections consistently, go figure out, is there a way that I can, again, like Skyler said, step over the hole without falling in the hole and then having to get out of it. And the pitch, I think we could, there are always going to be an ever evolving pitch of things that work and things that don't. And again, a couple years ago, we just never talked about this. And now it's like one of the main core things that we talk about. So super grateful for you, super grateful for Brock for being willing to go like make changes that have like literally fundamentally changed my selling. So now I want to dive in a little bit more, Skyler. What, for you as a rep, you are obsessed with learning. And I'm so impressed by that because so often I feel like reps kind of rely on their managers. And they almost blame their manager if they're not successful because it's like, well, he didn't give me a good enough training. But I've just noticed in your life, whether it's in sales, in business, in life, you're just always learning. Where does that drive come from to just constantly learn?
I don't know exactly where it comes from. But I do know that I've always just had a hunger to like be better, right? And learn things that work. And so, as I think through my like sales career, I've been able to pull from a lot of different like fountains of knowledge, right? I've had incredible mentors, incredible managers, you being one of them, Ben, a lot of guys that have taught me a ton about selling. And then I've just always sought out other ways that I could learn as well, whether that was through reading books. I remember, my first couple years of selling, I was usually reading multiple sales books per year. And it's really funny, you were touching on this just a second ago, but you look at like all of the topics that we train on here at Grit and how many of these things are like specifically unique to Grit. You hear the word pre-overcoming objections or going yard or framing the pitch, just all of these things that like, or twisting, like all of these things that now probably are more common in the industry, but none of those existed before we like started talking about those. So many of those things came from little things that like either myself or someone else pulled out of a book or heard somewhere else or just tried and it worked. And so, I think that drive just comes from having had success in the past, just learning and applying and learning and applying and learning and applying. And when I've learned something and applied it and it's brought success, it just is a positive feedback loop where it's like, now I just want to go learn more things that I can go apply and have more success. And so, I just always try to pull from different sources, from people, from books, from personal experience, and then package it into things that I can use and frameworks that I can use for myself and hopefully teach to other people and help them use as well.
Well, dude, I want to make this super actionable for everyone listening. Because again, there's tons of reps listening to this that are maybe struggling or they feel like they're not improving. Maybe their morning meetings aren't great, whatever it may be. And it sounds like you didn't rely on, again, one fountain. You just had so many. So let's talk about a few of those fountains and maybe just give some people some like Skyler's 3 best, right? So I know you've always been a podcast guy. If there's a rep out there that wants to improve, do you have like a podcast or 2 that you really like that are applicable or helpful? Obviously this one, hopefully that's your number 1. Shout out Good Morning Meeting.
There you go. Good Morning Meeting. It changes all the time, right? I remember, I've always loved listening to the Landing Pad podcast, listening and learning from the people that we work with and hearing more of their experiences. And other than that, like podcasts, it's kind of varied. For me, it's always been more like audiobooks, actual books. So to talk about books specifically.
That was gonna be my next question is, what are a couple, I know you're passionate and there's been a ton of books that have just been impactful for you. What are maybe your best 3 that if someone was like, hey, I really want to go learn, what are maybe the best 3 that are the most applicable to this job?
Yeah, for door-to-door sales specifically, I love Door-to-Door Millionaire. I give that to every first year rep that's going out there. Sell or Be Sold was a huge one. Sell or Be Sold was, where we learned the principle. I talk about this all the time, but like agreeing with the customer and being on their team. That came from Sell or Be Sold, chapter 9.
Beware though, Grant Cardone is going to try and sell you on his course throughout the book. That's okay because the principles are sound.
Yep. Sell or Be Sold's an amazing one. The Way of the Wolf, surprisingly, like got a few tidbits of knowledge from like that one too. Secrets of Closing the Sale by Zig Ziglar. Um, yeah, there's so many that you can pull from. So yeah, books have been huge, specifically like for selling. And then the other things that I remember pulling from, even as a fourth year rep on pace to sell 600 accounts, I remember Calvin Escobedo and I would watch the training videos on the way out to area. And, a lot of reps, I just think actually don't utilize those resources very much. Like their company, I know that we do. A lot of companies have these training videos. And I know a lot of reps just actually don't spend the time listening to them or watching them. And, in a lot of cases, those videos are what really like helped me also learn what works the best and perfect my own craft.
Yeah, what's interesting is that most companies, right, including the Grit, like everyone has the same resources.
Yeah.
Like at least everyone at the Grit. So what's like the big divide is typically the people that utilize and maximize those resources more
Yep.
have better results, right? Because I think every company has some form of like, hopefully, right? Like some training videos, maybe some recordings from the top reps. And it's like, but how many of those just go and are just sitting on a bookshelf, never being used, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say it's two things. It's intent, like being intentional about it, and then just actually putting in the time, right? This job is a skill-based job. Sales is a skill-based thing, which means you have a direct ability to improve your ability selling. Like you can directly improve it based on the way that you approach it, your intentionality, and the time that you spend actually trying to get better at it. And if you're not putting that much time into it, other than actually going out and doing the job, no, that's like just par for the course. You have to go out
Everyone's
and knock
doing
every
that
day. You have to show up to morning meeting every day. Outside of that, you have to, if you want to get good at it, no, you have to spend more time, right? You have to actually spend time in the weeds, analyzing your own pitch, thinking about what's going to make it better, reading and seeking out knowledge, and then applying that knowledge to actually make it better. And so, yeah, it's the intentionality, and then it's just actually putting the time in to get better at the skill, which is selling.
Yeah, and I think Abraham Lincoln said this. If I didn't, don't roast me in the comments if that's not the right person. But I think he said if I had 10 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend 9 hours sharpening the axe. And I think about that, right? Like everyone's going to chop down the tree. So what's going to be the differentiator of the people that get that tree down? It's the people that spend the most time sharpening their axe.
Yep.
And how many reps just go out throughout, they just do recruiting in the off season, or they hang out, they party, whatever, and they go out and they think that just doing the job is going to get them better. And remember, every rep is going to go out and just do the job. So the differentiator is all that other stuff. It's the time you put in books. It's the time that you, again, practice the pitch with other people. You're listening to pitches. You're listening to mentors. You're listening to podcasts. It's all that stuff that sharpens your axe so that when you actually hit the tree, it goes down fast. And so, to make this interactive for everyone, what I'd recommend is it's super easy to listen to even podcasts like this passively. You're driving out to area, you're hearing Skyler say things, you're hearing these little things, but then you get to area, you turn off the car, and all of a sudden you're about your day and nothing changes.
Yeah.
I think a way that you can turn this podcast, or at least this episode, from passive to active is ask yourself the question, how many hours, if any, this last week that I spend outside of just doing the normal job, improving my skill? And if the answer is 0, like you just unlocked a massive secret on how you can improve. And start somewhere. Like I am such a big believer in, there's a scripture that says by small and simple things, great things come to pass. And I think sometimes people get overwhelmed by just starting thinking like, well, I don't ever listen to books or podcasts or practice. And Skyler did all that. And it's like, dude, go listen to 20 minutes of a podcast a day. And guess what? Next week, when you answer the same question, you're going to be way further ahead than you were this week. Or go listen to one pitch today. I just think that if you can take some of the principles that you've learned from this episode and apply them, you are going to realize that you are the secret to making this job work. And so, yeah, super cool with that. I would love to I don't know why this is coming to my mind, but if you haven't read Door to Door Millionaire, I'm telling you guys, it is one of the best books that directly relates to this industry of door to door. Some things are out of date. To be fair, Lenny Gray, a little bit
Shout out Lenny Gray,
a little bit unk. But one of the principles that I remember that has always stuck with me, and I remember the very first time I read it on my way out to Columbus, Ohio, my very first year, it said, through all the years, and I'm paraphrasing this, it was like, we've done all this data and all this studying, and data shows that it's not the area that matters. It's not the weather that matters. It's like the attitude of the rep that determines how they're going to sell.
Yep.
And I remember as a rookie being like, okay, like, so I just got to have a good attitude and I have to believe I can sell in every area. And I remember adopting that and thinking, okay, Like, doesn't matter the area, doesn't matter the situation. I'm going to be the rep that can be expected to sell in literally any situation. And guys, that just came from a book, right? So if you haven't read Door to a Millionaire, I think it's like $11 on Amazon.
$20.
11, 20, it's awesome.
We order a lot of those on Amazon.
Guys, it's super great. Skyler, what it would be, again, knowing that a lot of people are listening to this, that are coming to this to gain knowledge.
Yeah.
To gain something that they can go apply today. In these last 5 minutes, what are some other like key insights you've had? Because again, you have 10, 11 years of experience in this job.
Yep.
In 5 minutes, let's turn 10 or 11 years of experience into the next 5 minutes for some of these reps listening. What are some of your biggest takeaways in door-to-door that you wish you either would have known or would have done differently?
Oh man. I could laundry list so many. But I think something that I see every single year is that it's harder. It's actually harder to be 98% in on this job than it is to be 100% in. So you see that every year throughout the summer, you get reps out there and they don't maybe have as strong of a why, or they're not just like all in on actually like maxing out the job. I promise you, even one pinky toe out makes this job so much harder. There's so much more decision fatigue. And so that would be a huge lesson. It's like the job will feel so much easier. You'll have so much of a better experience doing it by just actually like being all in on the job for while you're doing it.
Well, and Skyler, I guarantee you someone listening to this is going, crap, that's me.
Yep. If you're only 98, 95, 98, 92, whatever percent in, and there's just that little bit that's like kind of holding you back. Oh no, you just have to embrace it and you just have to own it. That's like all the rewards go to those people in this job.
So how do you do that? Because I think a lot of these reps that feel that way, they kind of are probably just realizing like, oh my gosh, I'm the guy that's 95% in. How do you go that extra 5% when you're in that mode?
Make the decision and then create the habits that support it.
Bars.
You just make the decision and then eliminate all the decisions that take you elsewhere, right? If it's the way that you take breaks, if it's like your schedule, if it's, how long you're going to be out there for the summer, whatever it might look like for you, it's going to look different for every single person, but you have to just totally eliminate all the decision fatigue, choose to be 100% in, and have a really strong why. Like you just have to have a strong why in this job.
Cool. And then what are maybe one or two other, just insights or secrets or things that you've learned over your 10 years that could be beneficial for someone who's driving out to area right now?
Yeah, well, just to not give people too much, maybe just to wrap it back into what we talked about today. It's like, go out today and think about the most common objection that you run across, and then just think about how you can beat the customer to the punch. Like we talked about we talked about overcoming the card and thinking about it. We listed off a bunch of other ones, and we train on all those other ones, right? We train on how to pre-overcome the do-it-yourselfer. We train on how to pre-overcome the person in contract. So I would just say, for anyone going out today, a real simple application would be, whether it's just take the one that we talked about today or another one that you're finding commonly, it's commit to go try and pre-overcome that objection every single time you're taking a customer through the sales process today, and just watch how it works for you. And the caveat with all of this is nothing that we say works 100% of the time. Sales is literally just a game of maximizing your odds with every person that you're talking to. And you can't expect that you make one tweak and all of a sudden everyone buys. No. That's not how it works. It's you go and make a tweak, understanding that now maybe you're going to have 2% better chance of closing that customer than you did yesterday. And as you compound all those little things, well, then every time you're taking a customer through the sales process, you're just going to have a little bit better of a chance to close that person. And so when you pre-overcome the objection and then the customer brings up the objection anyways, like they will, you just have to roll with that punch and understand like, okay, I did my part to pre-overcome it. This time it didn't work, but maybe next time it will. And so that would be the other thing that I would say is just understanding that like your job as a sales rep and your job in selling, it's not that you're going to close every single person that you talk to. It's that you need to maximize your chances of closing every single person that you talk to through the way that you set up the deal.
Well, guys, I hope that you took as much away from this podcast as I did. Obviously, Skyler is super articulate, laid it out for us really clearly. Again, go be the type of rep that you learn from yourself. When you have success, write it down, figure out what works, figure out what doesn't work, and don't do those things.
Yep.
Pre-overcoming objections obviously gave us a very simple example, but also that can be applied to so many other things, but you got to put in the work. And then obviously just the power of being a learner and taking all these other resources and not only just learning, but applying them. And that's been the secret and the story to Skyler's success. So guys, if you want to do what Skyler's done, if you want to have the success that Skyler has, which you should, right? Don't overcomplicate it. Go do these simple things that Skyler is doing. So I just want to thank you guys again for another one of these very special Good Morning meetings, and we'll catch you next week.